Hi everyone, Lisa Soames-Peck of Spellbound Miniatures here. We're having a cosy evening in the studio. Welcome to part 3 of the Bitesize series where we are building a room box on our Cricut Maker. In part 1 we just looked at the machine, part 2 we looked at design space, so hopefully you now have a lovely pile of bits in front of you. So let's go through them. There are 4 base pieces and there's 2 longer and 2 shorter ones. We have the frame, the front frame, the back wall, 2 side pieces and 2 larger pieces, which is the floor and the ceiling. So the first thing you really need to think about is whether you want to decorate and then build, or build and then decorate. I like to decorate first as much as I can. It's much easier to decorate onto a flat surface than sort of poke around in a box. So the only thing to bear in mind is if you're going to decorate first, you need to know where you're going to join one piece to the other. So if you had 2 pieces like this, where this edge joins onto there, if you'd painted both pieces, you'd be gluing the paint layer onto another paint layer, and that wouldn't be very strong. So we would mark off with a pencil underneath there the sort of gap where we wouldn't decorate, and we wouldn't decorate the ends. So we glue sort of chipboard to chipboard. That's much stronger. If you prefer, you can build and then decorate. It will be the same process sort of construction wise, so I'm going to show you how to decorate first, and then you just need to skip ahead to when we get to the construction part, and I'll put a sign up there, notification of where you need to go to skip the decorating bit. So even though I decorate first, I actually do glue my base together because this is an easy thing to paint afterwards. So we're going to get my gluing mat. If you don't know, I've got a gluing jig. I've got a video on that, and I'll put a link for that to that below as well. That's really handy. The gluing jig consists of a sheet of metal, a bit of Teflon sheet, and some magnets, and they're very strong magnets. These 2 bits at the end aren't the magnets, they kind of just hold the magnets together. And I also use, I've got a steel bench block here to make a nice right angle if I need to sort of put something up against it. So we've got 2 shorter and 2 longer pieces. The short ones are the sides, and then you've got a longer one at either end. So the short ones, let me just work out which ones. There we are, those are the short ones. So that's the front and the back. The short ones are short by exactly the amount of material at either end, so you end up with a perfect square. So if you get the shorter one, the glue goes on the end of the short one and onto the inside, sort of. So this is the short one, that glues up onto the inside of the longer piece. And for this I just used Aling's tacky glue as always. Just a simple bead of glue and bring it up to that piece, and you just want to make sure that the top and bottom edges are level and that it's nice and square. If anything glue squeezes out, wipe that off. And you could use the gluing jig, so you would have it like that. Put your upright behind it, and then hold it in place like that, and that can dry. We could do the same at the other end, except I haven't left enough space, but we could shove it along. But it goes off quite quick. I'm just checking, yeah, that's fine. The hardest thing is getting the magnets off of everything else. They're very strong magnets. So we'll just leave that to set up and I'll come back. Now once that's set and you take this off, it might, let me get that on camera, look a little wobbly and you think, oh, the glue hasn't gone off. I don't know if I can show you. Chipboard is in layers and that is actually a layer of chipboard. So it's actually glued to the piece, but the piece it's glued to is actually moving. So what we do is we actually open up that gap, and I use super glue, and put a bead just along there, just a tiny amount, and then hold that up. And I'll get a little bit squeezed out there, that's okay. And then make sure that again you set that at right angles to go off. And that's probably the only downside working with chipboard, is it can layer. You might find when you take it off of your mat, when you cut it, if it hasn't cut all the way through and you try and release it from the mat, you might get a layer that comes up there. But just always, it's better to actually open the layer up, squeeze a little bit of glue. It doesn't have to be super glue, it's just nice and quick. And then you can see now that's supporting itself. So we do the same on the other end. We get the other short piece, make sure that's the right piece, yeah, and we will put that onto the longest piece. So we're going to put glue on the short piece edge and fit that onto the sort of inside edge of the long piece. So there we have now the two shortest sides onto the longest side, and then this other longest side will simply fit onto there that way. So we'll put glue on these ends and they'll fit onto that one, and they are quite flexible, so it doesn't matter if they move a little bit. Once all corners are glued, it's quite strong. So I will do that now. Make sure they're level sort of this way and at the corners. Wipe off any excess glue. And you could sort of put it that way so that there's downward pressure on those joints if you wanted to. If you get any glue on the inside and you'd like to get that out, just use a cocktail stick. But no one's going to see the inside of that bit anyway. The only time that it's really important not to overglue is, say you wanted to keep this chipboard and stain it to look like wood. Glue or dried glue and stain don't mix, so you need to not overglue or get any glue excess because the stain won't take. So that you need to be a little bit more careful. And I think on this room box I am going to paint this. When we move on to the Cricut cabin, which is coming up in the next video series, I'll be keeping the chipboard colour and the wood coloured craft board to look like a wood cabin, so I will be very careful then. So we leave that to dry. Okay, while that's drying, we are going to mark out where we can decorate up to, and the outside you can decorate afterwards, I think, but it's the inside that's the tricky one to decorate once it's built. So I will do the inside 3 walls. I like to do a mixture of paper and paint. So if you did mark out the back wall before you cut it. That piece is obvious. We've got the two side pieces, which are just slightly bigger than the back wall, and we've got the floor, which is one of the larger pieces. And if you put the back wall onto the floor, you'll notice that there's a gap either side, and that is exactly the width of the side piece. It's exactly 2mm. So that's the sort of the way we will construct it, is that the side pieces go on the outside of the back wall, and then everything sits on to the floor. So if we want to decorate the back wall, we know we can actually decorate from one side to the other, but we need to keep this edge unpainted. The side wall, where it butts up and the back wall fixes onto it, that is where we need to draw our line there, and we don't decorate the thin strip there where we're going to glue the back wall onto the side wall. But if you kind of get confused and think, oh, I can't remember which bit goes where, just think the back wall goes on to the floor first, and then you'll see there's a gap where the side wall fits onto the floor and the back wall glues onto the side of the side wall. So we've got our back and side wall here. The side wall goes on the desk. The back wall fits onto it, and just line it up with the back edge on here so you can see exactly where it starts and stops. You could also measure out 2mm, and because sometimes the chipboard can bow a little, so if you think it's more bowed, it's going to be harder to draw a straight line, measure out 2mm. It's harder to see here, all the lights on. 2mm there. There, and then draw a line. Do the same at the other end, because the front frame, where we've got the back wall that sits inside, also the front frame does the same, sits inside of the side wall and onto the base. There we go. So if you can see that, probably easier on that camera, is it? Very faint line. Yeah, you can just see there's a faint line there where we know now we can paint or paper up to. If you are going to paper, much easier to do it on a flat surface, because you can also use the brayer to roll out, I've got a squeaky brayer, roll out any air bubbles. So I'm going to use paper on my back wall but paint on my side walls. So we'll do the back wall first, and we know we can go from one edge to the other of the back wall, so I will get some paper and I'll be back. Okay, I love these books. They're kind of scrap booking, cardstock, lovely thick paper. What would you call it? A pad, paper pad. You get it at the hobby store, and they just have lovely different textures and patterns. Sometimes they're double-sided, sometimes they have a little bit of embellishment. Have they got any in here? A little bit more glittery. That one has, I don't know if you can see, that one's got more shine, which I wouldn't recommend in miniatures. Too much shine looks a bit unrealistic, and again that's a shiny one, but they also usually do the non-shiny version of the same paper. I'm loving this one. See that? Very hard to get this one to focus, this camera. Turn it round. And they do all sizes of these books. They do a slightly bigger one, but the scale's bigger, and I actually like this scale, so I have to do a little bit of cutting and matching in. That's quite cute. I like that one. I'm using that one in my Christmas cabin. You've probably seen those photos already with the beds in. That would make quite a good den. And you can just go whatever colour you like with these. Let me have a look. I did like that one. And they usually have more than one sheet of the same pattern, so if your room is, or your wall is bigger than the sheet, that is cool too. That's quite nice. And that's a good, they often have like complementary ones, so you could do one on one wall or one in another room. That's quite nice as well. And that's another complementary one. I think I'm going to go with this one on the back wall, and I do need more than one piece, as you can see. How many pieces have I got of this? I've got 3 in all together, and I want to make a chimney breast too in this room box. I'll show you how to do that. So I will need all 3 pieces. There is a gap at the top and the bottom. I could move it down and cut and paste in at the top, or I could cheat slightly and we could put a baseboard effect at the bottom and the top. It just so happens that these sheets are just that bit short, and I think I will add a baseboard and some cornicing and cheat on this one. So let's just see if we can match it up. They don't always match these because they're not actually wallpaper. So where's that fox gone there? Fox facing forward. Oh, who's there? Yeah, they don't match up. So I kind of just think the chimney breast is actually going to be in the middle, so we could hide this join in the middle, put the chimney breast on the front, and you're never going to know from one side to the other that there was not a continuous pattern behind it. So I think that's what I'm going to do. No one but us will know. So what glue shall I use? Actually, for paper products, I like to use a glue stick. It hasn't got so much water in, so it doesn't tend to warp and bubble as much. Any old glue stick's fine. Okay. This couldn't be easier. We know the chimney breast is going to be in the middle, so roughly in the middle I will put this. I might have possibly larger baseboards than cornicing, so put that one there. Match that one up there. Get my squeaky brayer. Go up to the edges. And we will leave that to dry. I do have a really big slab of granite that I can press things under, and will it fit on camera here? Let me just go and get it, see if I can fit it on camera. Okay, so I have this massive slab, oh where has it gone there, of granite with a really lovely shiny surface on the top, which is what you would normally, it's like a worktop saver, you would chop food on it, and then it's really heavy, don't trap your fingers. Use another piece of Teflon sheet there, that stops the glue sticking to the granite, and literally weigh that down, and then that helps to keep everything flat when it dries. I use this so much, even if you can't get a great big slab, another thing that's quite handy is a steel bench block, which you use in jewellery making. That's really good for weighing things down as well. So we'll leave that to dry and we'll come back. Okay, so we'll take the slab of granite off now. That's dried. Of course, you could have just painted the whole of the back piece, it's up to you. And then just grab a cutting mat, and we're going to turn this over and literally slice off the excess. So we can use the chipboard as a guide. That noise you can hear, the paper's slightly embossed. And it doesn't want to come off at the top. There we go. Can you see that there? Yeah, just slightly embossed. So we cut it off like that. Turn it over and do the other side. I've used acrylic paints to paint chipboard. Didn't need to prime it. The only thing I would say is it can warp slightly like any wood or paper based product. You can do both sides if they're the same colour or different colours at the same time, that helps. Or I will do one side and then when it turns over, do it dry to the other side and then I'll press it for a little bit. So whatever you need to do, but when we glue it, we can it straightens itself out anyway. So that is one back wall wallpapered. Okay, so we're back and I decided not to paint this. I remembered that there was a nice coordinating paper in that book. So if you can see there, that's upside down. I got the paper and took the back wall up to it so I could get the exact same gaps top and bottom. And I don't know if you'll be able to see that paper. It's just got a really fine diagonal line on it, but it's the same green background as this one. So now I will have the two side walls with the gaps, and they will glue in place either side of the back wall like that. And it saved me having to mix the colour and wait for it to dry. So those have already been glued and pressed. So that's the back wall, the two side walls. The only other thing really before we think about construction is the front frame piece. And if you imagine with the back wall now, that's the back, this is the front, and you kind of look through like a 3D picture frame. There's one option with this, if you'd want to, and you've got some craft board, you'd like to make a little bit more of a detailed layer. We've included in the SVG bundle these craft board layers. You could do it in matte board, might be a little thick. They're simply, obviously one at a time, One is slightly smaller than the frame, the next one is slightly smaller than that, and then the last one. So you can have as many or as few as you want, you don't have to have all of them. And again, to glue this and press this down while it's flat like this, I prefer to do it now. So again, I'll use this because craft board and glue stick is better than a wetter glue. I don't think you need to watch me gluing this bit. It's just literally, I'll apply it onto the biggest bit first, and I don't measure. You could measure if you wanted to, but I will literally eyeball that and line it up and then press it down. And I'll do all 3 layers and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've glued them on and pressed them down. They're all dry. The reason I needed to do that is so we can press it flat before we build it, and also that I want to paint the back of the frame so that it's the inside of the box really is completely decorated. So if we go again to get the back and the 2 sides, and then the frame sits, I need another pair of hands, the frame sits, I'll just imagine that side is there, inside there like that. So we don't put any paint on the edges of the frame, but we can paint the back of it edge to edge like we could decorate the back piece edge to edge, because these sit inside. So I've decided I'm going to paint this room box in white, and white gesso I'm going to use. It's like a primer, and it covers really well, dries quickly, and I'm just going to paint this piece, and then once this is dry we're ready to start construction. And whilst we don't want to glue the edges, the outside edges, oh, can you see that? We are okay to go on the inside edges, so those edges there, because I'm going to be painting the front the same as the back also. If I wanted a really fine finish on this, I would spray paint it, but I'm okay with quite a rustic look. It's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be a bedroom or a den. And although we are going to be making the cabin next, a sort of log cabin, this might have a similar feel. And I might even make it a Christmas themed room box to go in the group. If you're in the Miniatures Made by Cricketers group, you know we've got a winter challenge on where you can build anything, large or small, doesn't have to be a room box, and even a piece of a miniature that kind of along the theme of winter, Christmas if you celebrate it, holidays, festive, anything like that. So I might use this room box in my entry. And then I'm just going to drag the brush over to, then the lines sort of, it's not going to be a wood effect as such, but it might end up looking slightly as if it's got a bit of a wood grain to it, but I will be going over and doing a second coat anyway. So that is that. I'll probably do the front while I'm at it, just because if you've got any bits that bleed, if you can see it's bled over there, it's just easier to mop those up. So I'm going to wait for that to dry. I'll do a second coat, rub down anything where I've gone over it where I shouldn't have done. That's it for today. I'll see you in the next video where we will start the construction process. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you soon.